neighbor giving that type of testimony?
Like I said, I'm not too sure because I don't think that's what happened.
If a neighbor were to testify that the two people that Mr. Greenlaw was saying, get off my effing property, were giving him a hard time, how would you account for that testimony? How could you explain that testimony?
Can't really explain it. I know what happened. And I can't really say any otherwise.
What if the same neighbor testified and said that a couple times the two people that Mr. Greenlaw was yelling to get off the effing property came toward him? How would you explain that testimony from an unbiased, neutral witness?
I'm not really too sure because I don't know where the beer bottle came from. I don't know where the machete comes from. It all happened too quick. I'm not too sure.
Now, I'm a little bit unclear on actually several things, but Mr. Lawrence asked you about whether or not you had had any alcohol over at Brian's house before he went to the Hess station. You remember him asking you that?
No.
You don't remember Mr. Lawrence asking you if you told law enforcement that you had some beer at Brian's house before you went to the Hess station?
No. I was at a totally different house the whole time.
Did I just approach you on it?
I might say one thing, but I know exactly what's going
If I
on.
could, just let me show you. It's the same thing that Mr. Lawrence showed you previously. It's an undated statement that you gave to Investigator Lee, page 31, line 22 through 25. You've already had a chance to look at this, but look at it
Say
again.
20 to 25. Actually, I didn't read none of this.
Okay, no, here's
Yeah.
page 31, line 22 through 25. Does that refresh your memory as to what you told the investigator about whether you had some beers at Brian's house before you went to the Hess
It
station?
says, yeah, just a few, but I was never there.
Well,
I was over at Tim Will's house.
let me ask you, I don't understand, okay? Maybe you can help me. When you said this, were you being untruthful?
No.
Are you accusing whoever recorded this statement of having manipulated the tape so it made it sound like you said that when in fact you didn't?
From what I'm reading, it sounds like a lot of manipulation.
Okay, well, who would have been doing the manipulation? Law enforcement? The person that typed this up? Who, you're
I'm
saying you
not too
see a
sure.
lot of
I'm
manipulation?
not too sure.
So you see, are you saying that in a lot of things that have been pointed out to you during the examination by Mr. Lawrence have been manipulated by somebody?
Pretty much saying maybe they kind of reword it, you know? Like say one thing and kind of switch it over, then I'll say something else.
Okay, so
But
just
this is what I've read in here.
as an example, are you saying that when you told the investigator that this undated interview or investigator Lee, when the transcript says, so you and Brian go down to the Hess station, you all had a couple Heinekens at his house already, and you go, yeah, just a few. You're saying that some unknown person manipulated that to make it sound like and read like that's what you said.
I'm just saying that I was never over there. That's
Well,
all
you're
I'm
not
saying.
answering my question.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Some unknown person has manipulated either the recording or the transcript to make it look like that's what you said when in fact you didn't say it.
I can't really say that because maybe when they're asking these questions, they're asking differently. Like they give me numerous certain questions and I say certain different things. I'm not really too sure.
In regard to the issue of whether you went over to Brian's house before you went to the Hess station, do you remember when you were talking with the investigator and you talked to him about going to Tim Wolf's? living
Yeah.
up Annapolis.
Yeah, I told him.
And then you remember telling the investigator about walking home and meeting up with Brian.
Yes,
And that he asked you if you wanted to hang out.
yes,
And you said you wanted to hang out, right?
yes.
During that portion of the interview with the investigator, did you say anything about going back to Brian's house and having a couple of Heinekens?
No, because from General Marshall, Roosevelt, I believe, when I was walking down the street, we went from there straight to the head station, then straight to the sugar bowl.
Could I approach you again? Let me show you page 9 of this undated interview. You just start looking and review page 9, line 14 through 25. If you just read that to yourself and see if that refreshes your memory as to whether or not you told the investigator on this other occasion during this interview that you went to Brian's and had some Heineken.
Judge, I'm going to object again, ask and answer. I think we've covered this at least once with Mr. Lawrence. Now we're covering it again with Mr. Fowler.
The argument, this is a totally different portion of the same interview. He said that one part was possibly manipulated and it didn't reflect what he said. I'm pointing out another page, another part of the conversation where he's
I will overrule the objection. We need to limit objection, basis for objection responses to the objections in front of the jury. I'll overrule. Let's keep it to a minimum next time.
Sorry. Okay. And so, does that refresh your memory that in another part of that interview, you told the investigator that you went back to Brian's house after you met up with him?
Doesn't refresh my memory at all, because I was walking down General Doolittle or General Marshall, can't remember exactly, by Annapolis, and we went straight to the station.
Okay, so by reading this where it says, and then we went back to his house and had a couple Heinekens, that does not refresh your memory as to what you told the investigator
No, it doesn't.
during this undated interview.
No, it doesn't.
Wait just a second. Okay, well, then you indicate that you went to the Hess station and bought a 12-pack of Heineken, correct?
Possibly, yes.
Possibly.
I told you, what I really told you was, we bought a bottle of, a 12-pack of green glass. That's what, I didn't remember exactly what type of alcohol it was.
Okay. But whether it be Heineken or whatever, it was beer.
Single Adams, I don't know. Yes. it was
You don't
beer.
know. Okay, well, let me. Okay, again, approach your honor.
Yes, you may.
Let me again show you page 9. Starting with line, I'm going to ask you to read the part about where you told them that you went back to the house and had a couple Heinekens. But starting here it goes, and I, just read that and see if that refreshes your memory as to whether you went and got a 12-pack of Heineken, or you told the
Yeah,
investigator.
I knew for a fact I got a 12-pack, I can just.
Okay, well, I thought you just said.
Or it was some type of beer with the green glass. I'm not sure if it exactly was Heineken or another type of beer.
But you'll acknowledge when you talked to the investigator, you said it was a 12-pack of Heineken.
Yeah, I even told him that, maybe it was, I even told him, I wasn't sure.
Now,
I think I told him it was was it St. Patty's Girl or whatever it's called?
so then after you get the
Holly Girl, okay.
12-pack or whatever you now say it was, you go out to Dry Lake, right?
Dry Lake.
Or the Sugar Bowl or whatever they call it out there.
Yeah,
And you and Mr. Levitt are drinking your alcohol, correct? how many do you think you had?
Like I said, I probably had maybe 5 or 6, and he had a few left.
And that's when you met up with the people identified as Scott and Kendra, correct?
Yes.
Now, I'm a little bit unclear because did you testify that you had some of their whiskey out there at Dry Lake, or did you testify that you didn't have some of their whiskey out at Dry Lake?
I'm not really too sure. I don't think we had any whiskey out there. Not really too sure. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't.
Because the way my notes indicate that you testified that Scott had the white Jeep and you had some of their whiskey. So which was it? Did you have some of their whiskey or did you not have some of their whiskey?
I don't think so.
Now, when you were out there at Dry Lake with Kendra and Scott, were they snorting cocaine?
Yes.
And when you were out there at Dry Lake with Kendra and Scott, was there any mention by you about selling pills?
No, it wasn't.
Was there any mention by Brian Leverett of selling some pills and seeing if Wayne Greenlaw wanted them?
No.
Was there any mention from Scott about buying pills from you and or
No.
Brian Leverett?
No.
Now, you were also asked, and I wasn't quite clear on the answer, about were there any limitations on when you were going to go over to Wayne Greenlaw's? In other words, don't go over there until we're over there. And you said Scott never told you that, is that correct?
I never told you that.
Okay, how about Kendra? Did she tell you that?
No.
Okay, so it's your testimony that neither Kendra nor Scott told you not to go over to the Greenlaw's house until they were there at the house. Is that what you're telling us?
I never said that.
Now, when you went over to the Greenlaw's house, did you take the rest of the beer that you hadn't consumed over to the house with you?
Yes, we had a few beers left.
So of the 12 pack or whatever it was that you bought, you had a couple of them left, and whatever you didn't finish out at Dry Lake, you took over to the Greenlaw house with you.
Yes.
Now, you indicated you were in the hospital for how long?
I was guessing 7 days maybe at most. Not really too sure.
Okay, well, I would assume this was a pretty significant event in your life, right?
Yes.
Okay, and you don't know how many days you were in the hospital?
No.
Okay. Well, the incident took place on October 29, 2011, correct?
Yes.
And do you remember giving an interview, a recorded interview to law enforcement on November 2nd, 2011?
Bits and pieces.
Well, the first interview that you gave to law enforcement after you got out of the hospital, was that down at the Volusia County Sheriff's Office?
Yeah.
And do you recall asking, or being asked during the deposition that was taken of you on June 8, 2012 as to how long you have been hospitalized?
I wasn't sure. Exactly.
Okay, do you remember what your answer was?
Maybe 7 days possibly.
Like
Is that what I said?
from? Let me show you page 30 of your deposition taken on June 8, 2011. If you would look at a line 17 through, 19, and just read that yourself.
Where's 17 through 19?
Right here, right where I underlined.
Said just a couple days, 4 days, I think, and maybe, I don't know, 5 days, 4 or 5.
So you're not really too sure how long?
No, I'm not too sure.
But it could have been just a couple days.
It's just big days.
Excuse me?
Really, I was in the days.
Okay, you were in the days when you gave the deposition on June 8, 2012, or you're talking about you were in the days when?
Pretty much everything, yeah.
Okay, so now I'm really unclear on that. Are you in the days about everything that you testified to
No.
today?
No, sir.
All right. Well, what do you mean by?
Just when I was in the hospital and I was doing the recording, I was just in the major days.
Okay. But the deposition that you gave on June 8, 2012, when I just had you review it,
It says 4 or 5 days, but I'm guessing at least 7 days now. Yeah.
if I could just have a second. Okay, just a couple other things here. It's your testimony that you drove to Brian's house and then walked to the Greenlaw house, is that correct?
Yes. I didn't drive, Brian drove.
Okay, and you recall giving this, again, undated interview to investigator Lee that we've been talking about.
Okay.
And you remember in that interview being asked about how you got over there?
No.
You don't, let me show you page 11, if I could approach your honor. Page 11, line 20 through 22. Yes, sir. 20 through 22. Does that refresh your memory on what you told the investigator?
Yeah, I remember just us going to Brian's house parking. Yeah.
Well, does it then refresh your memory that it said we pulled up there, we met those two guys, whatever their names, I can't remember, the Greenlaws?
Yeah. We walked over. No.
I don't have anything further, Your Honor.
Examinations.
Okay. Justin, are you trying to mislead anybody here in this courtroom?
No.
These two lawyers have been back and forth with a lot of different statements today, where you've said different things than you're saying here in court.
Yes.
You recognize that?
Yes.
Were you trying to mislead the jury when you were testifying about what happened that night?
No.
Are you giving them your best account of what you can truly remember?
Yeah, I'm just going by my memory.
Are you trying to conceal the fact that you were drinking?
No.
In fact, you admit that you were drinking,
Yes.
and you admit that you purchased alcohol,
Yes.
and you admit that you drank other people's alcohol.
Yes.
You admit that you drank a lot that night.
Yes.
You admit you drank a lot of beers, right?
Yes. Yes.
And that you drank a lot of whiskey.
2 good shots of whiskey, yes.
In fact, you were even chugging off the bottle.
Yes.
Now, we've previously talked about your difficulty giving statements when you were in the hospital.
Yes.
That you lost a lot of blood,
Yes.
that you were under the influence of narcotics,
Yes.
that they had given you to treat your injuries,
Yes.
and that you had also been drinking.
Agree.
I'm going to show you the statement from the hospital. Well, before we do,
I think Mr. Lawrence came up here and asked you 3 times whether or not you had driven to the defendant's house that night.
Yes,
And your recollection was that, no, you didn't drive, you drove to Brian's, parked, and walked.
yes,
Okay, and he showed you this statement.
yes,
And I think Mr. Valerino just showed you a statement and asked you the same thing.
yes,
And both of them have talked to you from this very same statement about how much drinking and how much booze and alcohol you consumed and where you got.
yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you the statement that was taken October 29th, 2011, page 3. And on the first, well, excuse me, on page 3, when the investigator asks you where you were when this happened, I want you to read to us lines 12 through 15. Where did you tell them that you were when all of this occurred?
I said I was at my friend's apartment complex,
Where?
and the investigator said, where was that at? And I said, off Silver Sands.
And where is that? What city?
That's in Fort Orange, Silver Sands Middle School, right east coast line.
And then a little bit later in this statement, I think page 4, you talk to him about how your arm is killing you,
Yeah,
and that you want something to stop the pain.
yes,
And when you talk about somebody right here on page 4 that pushed you, who do you say that it was on line 13, or excuse me, on line 11?
undercover cop,
You say that an undercover cop pushed you.
yes,
And this is one of the statements that's been used to impeach you very often here today, isn't it?
yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Anything further?
Nothing on behalf of Greenlaw.
No, ma'am, I'll make
All right, we need to address Mr. Riley's being released from his subpoena because of his ability to remain in the courtroom if he is released. What is the state's position at this point?
I have no problem with releasing you at this point, Judge.
Mr. Lawrence?
I have no objection. No objection, Your Honor.
And all counsel realize that in the event that they change their mind, we will have heard all of the testimony from this point forward. And you're still in agreement with that?
If the state represents that he will not be called again, then I have no objection. If there's a possibility he will be called again, then I would have an objection.
No. He's a joint witness, so it's not just the state. You will
No, that's
not be able to
true.
make the decision not to call him. That's why I'm making sure that you're willing to commit to that decision.
That's correct.
All right? For Ray Greenlaw, that's the case, and I just want to get that verification from counsel for Wayne Greenlaw.
I don't have any objection to the release.
Right. Mr. Riley, you are now released from your subpoena. You are subject to the, have a seat, sir. You are subject to the court's prior instruction that you were given on Friday not to discuss your testimony with any other witness or anyone for that matter other than the attorneys involved in this case. We talked about what the representations would be if you were to violate that. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Other than that, you're released from the subpoena. You're either free to go or you're free to stay and observe the proceedings from this point until the end of the trial.
Okay, thanks, ma'am.
Counsel, please approach. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the next witness, all attorneys anticipate taking quite some time. So I don't see any benefit to starting and going 30 minutes and then start picking back up until tomorrow morning. So we're going to go ahead and recess today for the evening, subject to all the court's prior instructions on communication and research. Again, we'll ask you to be back here ready to go by 8:45 in the morning, and we'll pick up with that witness at that time. You are released for the evening.
Just confirm the source of all the transport was involved.
Yes.
Deputy Murchison just had a brief conversation with the juror that last left, the one that's sitting here on the end is juror number 11. He wanted to let her know to advise me that Mr. Riley brought up the name of Tim Wolf. He believes he recognizes that name and doesn't know if that's an issue.
No,
State have any reason to have you inquire further of him tomorrow?
no, ma'am.
Counsel for Wayne Greenlaw?
And I can't think of any possible reason why the name all by itself would have any impact on this trial.
Counsel for Ray Greenlaw?
I would agree, he's not going to be a witness in the case or anything like that.
I think he was just bringing it to our attention because it was a name that had not previously been addressed. He's doing his due diligence as a juror to make sure that it's not a problem. I just wanted to share that information and get everybody's position on the record. Is there anything further that we need to address this evening?
No.
There you are.
Okay.
We are in recess. Please be ready to go by 8:45 in the morning.
Yes, ma'am.